How y'all doing? Today I wanted to talk about my experience going to a one-room schoolhouse school. For context, I have gone to a public school. I have, for many years of my life, I've gone to charter schools. And for 2 years, I went to a one-room schoolhouse church school. The denomination was Seventh-day Adventist, but there were many kids who went to the school who were not Seventh-day Adventist. So, and it wasn't really, we didn't teach Ellen White. My teacher never did. So if you're familiar with the Seventh-day Adventist teachings, I don't ascribe to a lot of their teachings, and neither did a lot of the kids in the school. But that being said, yeah, it wasn't taught. Like Ellen White wasn't taught. It was mostly just overall Christianity, that was just taught in the schools. And we had one class that was Bible study, and yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't say that it was really pushing any agenda. I really wouldn't say that. Yeah, but it was my favorite schooling that I had ever been to out of all of my years in school. Sorry, I love to talk with a paintbrush. If you know me, you know me. It's just something that I do. Or with a pencil. It just makes me feel, I guess it makes me feel like a teacher a little bit. But I had the best of time at that Seventh-day Adventist school. Now, the grades for that school went from first grade all the way to 8th grade, and that was the cutoff. And then I guess they expected you, or thought that you would go to a boarding school. That was at least what it was, not expected of me, but it was very like, well, from here, if you want to continue this type of education, you're probably going to want to go to this boarding school that's 9th through 12th. So pretty much all your high school years would be spent at this boarding school. And it's like a Seventh-day Adventist type boarding school, I'm pretty sure. But I did not choose that option because that sounded terrible. To me, a boarding school sounded terrible. I've always been very close to my family. Like, family is everything to me, and my mom and I are besties. Like, that just sounded like, it sounded so sad, honestly. In fact, after that, I started to do online school and then like a version of unschooling, and those were my favorite. Those were my favorite of all. But in terms of like a typical school education, going to the one-room schoolhouse was my all-time favorite. And I will tell you why that is. School for me, public school for me, was not very fun. I didn't enjoy it. I am neurodivergent, and so schooling itself was very overstimulating for me. It felt like a constant overstimulation. And also, I mean, a lot of like the system of school and how school is run, I don't believe in. And even as a kid, it felt so wrong. There was something just so wrong about how school was set up. That we're all supposed to do this thing. We all get up at the sound of a bell. There's this like, and I'm a person who loves structure. I was a kid who loved structure. I always did well with the teachers who taught with a more structured old school method of doing things. And still, I felt that there was just something so mechanical about school and so limiting about school. a public school, even the charter school, which did things like a little bit differently, but not really. It just felt very unnecessarily hard. And we all were learning at the same pace. Pretty much everything about school I dislike. I dislike to this day, fundamentally. And the more I learn about it, the more I feel as though it is just this thing that is so ingrained in us, but really it's really wrong to the human spirit, and it's really wrong for even, I'll go out and say this, even for adulthood. It doesn't train you for adulthood at all, in my personal experience. The times where I felt like I was the most taught about adulthood and the most educated was in this one room schoolhouse. That was when I felt the most like my education was probably the greatest or the highest quality, and I felt like it prepared me a lot more for adulthood, and I'll explain why. Number one, for me personally, I had a class that consisted of 12 kids in total. In the whole school, there was 12 kids. So that meant that within those 12 kids, there were age ranges from first grade, so about 5. Our youngest, there was 5. All the way to me, I was the oldest, although there were others in my grade. I just so happened to be the oldest. And at the time I was 14. And so those were the age ranges. I personally had a lot of people, I had the most people in my class. We were the graduating class in 8th grade, for my second year, and there were 4 of us. So, in my grade. And I had a lot of fun with that. I liked how it taught you life lessons in so many ways. And being in a school that had all of those age ranges, right? And for the little ones, I think if I had grown up in that school when I was little, I think it would have been very beneficial, because the little ones got to learn things well above their grade level at certain moments. And so then as they are growing, as they are getting up there, their grades are I don't know how to phrase that, as they're reaching certain age limits, these concepts are already easy to understand for them. Like they've already learned certain things in other areas when they were in, let's say, 2nd grade or 3rd grade. And so when they're in 5th grade, that concept isn't that weird to them. Or maybe it's easier to digest other areas of life. And I liked that. And a lot of the times when my teacher would be teaching us something, or even the younger kids something, and he felt that the whole class could use that lesson, he would gather us all around and we would all be pulled together to learn this lesson. And it was often very hands-on. We were free to ask any questions that we wanted to. It was very free. There was a certain structure of how things could go, but also if you felt like you wanted to do things in a different way, he gave you that freedom, and I loved that so much. There were some kids in my grade who, of course, as you age, you're given a little bit more freedom. Like he wouldn't give the same freedoms to the 2nd graders as he would give to us, but we were given the freedom to change our schedule, because we all knew the workload that we had for, let's say, a week. And we were able to organize that in a way that suits our life best. So if we wanted to do like math, science, English, all of the things every single day, we could. If we wanted like Monday to be math, Tuesday to be science, we were able to do that. And so there were some kids that learned better that way. Like, today is a math day. Let me really delve into my math studies and just get that done. It also meant that, like, if you wanted to rush load it and just, like, you felt like you were getting it, you were getting it down, you were understanding the math, and you were able to like zip through things, then you could, and you'd be able to like theoretically spend your last day doing like other things, homework, or you know, whatever you really wanted to do. And that was pretty cool. Or if you wanted to help another student with something, you totally could. There was like this level, I guess, of mutual respect, I guess, that it kind of taught you too, because it's like we're all in this. There's only 12 of us, or 12, yeah, only 12 of us students. If you guys want to chit chat and you feel like chit chatting while you're doing your work is helping you, go ahead, as long as that is not interfering with your work. Like, there was a lot of leeway. If you want to chew gum, go right ahead, as long as it's not interfering with your work. And we all kind of had that, because it's such a small class, we had that like understanding that he's giving us that, and that is not a right, the privilege, you know what I mean? And so it kind of helped us in a way become more mature, I'd say. And we all would kind of remind each other, like, hey, you're doing a lot of talking, not seeing a whole lot of math being done, and I don't, you know, I just think it would be wise, you know, if you got back to your work, or whatever. And it was just really nice. Yeah, and we had a lot of, he would have us do like a lot of lessons that were across ages. So like my sister's 2 years younger than me, and so what would she have been at the time? I was in 8th grade, she would have been in 6th. And so sometimes if we both had done like a history lesson, right, we had just spent like maybe like a whole chapter on a certain lesson in history, and they had just done a whole chapter in history, and they were kind of overlapping like in topics, or kind of similar in topics, we could do a project together, and we could kind of relay some of the information that we had to them, and they could relay some of the information that they had to us, and we could do a whole project together. There was one time where I remember all of us got together, and we were able to do, because there was 2 kids in 6th grade, and then there was the 4 of us in 8th grade, and there was nobody in 7th. I don't know, that skipped, I guess. But so the 6 of us were able to put on a little play, and we were able to write the script, and just get really creative with it, do costumes if we wanted to, because we had extra time, but not excessive extra time, if that makes sense. It wasn't like we were doing nothing all day. We got our work done, and there wasn't a whole lot of this in between, like, okay, you got 5 minutes at each bell, you gotta sit down, we're shuffling our papers. I mean, it's all in one area, and so there is not a whole lot of like in between space that you get in public schools, which is great. We also had, and I think a lot of other schools are like this, like we had our main classroom, but we also had other classrooms that kids could go in if they just like felt like they wanted to be alone, if they felt like they worked better by themselves, or you know, if the little kids were having like recess or little indoor playtime, it's like, okay, well, I'll have you guys go in this room and do your studying, do your play, while the little kids go in here. It worked, and it was great. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I really did. And I loved how it also taught us, or exercised the skill of parenting in a way. I mean, not that we were parents, but we were able to help teach the little ones as well. And I just think that that was like a really useful skill that you don't get in a normal school. You just don't get that experience. And I notice a lot of people who are so pro public school talking about how like, I want my kid to engage with other people their own age. And I don't know of very many one-room schoolhouses that don't have kids that are, you know, similar ages. Like, I'm sure they exist out there, but like I said, in my experience, there were 4 of us in my grade. there was my sister and somebody else in her grade, and if there had been somebody in 7th grade, we all kind of would have been around the same age grade. You know, so it's not really that different. It's not like we are losing social skills in that way. Yeah, I also feel like, if anything, it exercises social skills, because we also were able to go on a lot more field trips. And when you're in such a small class with a smaller environment, it promotes asking more questions and being more, I don't want to say one-on-one with like a tour guide, but just sort of like, it's almost like we're all just humans going on this thing together, rather than like, I am the tour guide, you guys are the children, if that makes sense. And so it kind of promote asking questions. That's at least what I felt. We all were very interested in our field trips. They were a lot of fun, and we wouldn't shy away from asking questions or immersing ourselves in the experience of a field trip. Whereas when I was in public school, I definitely held back a little bit. Like, not held back. I definitely stayed in the back of the class a little bit. I didn't want to be seen as much. I felt like it wasn't really welcomed to fully ask questions. You know, you did have the ridicule, I guess, of your peers, which to me is very unnatural. You don't find that when you're in a work environment. You're not finding that everybody's the same age. Everybody's been through the same experience. Everybody, you know, is at this level. I think that almost creates hive mind in a way. And so having the balances of a lot of different ages, lots of different people, definitely different walks of life, and all of that kind of helps with that. You feel free to ask questions, and feel free to be more of yourself. That was me anyway. I enjoyed it greatly. What else was I thinking about? I don't know. I don't think I had any other thoughts about this. Let me think for a second. Oh, I also feel like it prepared me for adulthood a little bit better than public school, because it was very much like real life. You know what I mean? We weren't in public school. You're kind of forced to do everything by the book. There is no, or very little, thinking outside of the box of that. You're very seldomly allowed to do things outside of the box of what this is. You know, there are moments where maybe, I loved this growing up, right, in public school, where the teacher would go, would you go down to the office and go give this to the office lady? And you're like, yes, I get to leave the classroom. I get to be on this special mission, right? Or like, would you go print this off for me? You know, you get to be the special kid who does that. I always loved that growing up, but you know, it still felt like, wow, this teacher is giving you this special mission. You're not usually allowed to leave the classroom. You're not usually allowed. It takes away a lot of your freedom and your bodily autonomy. That, I mean, essentially is school, right? It does take away your bodily autonomy and your rights, which in the real world is just not how things work. You have your freedom. Even at work, you have the right to say, no, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. Or, you know, that's not a part of my job. How do I let my boss know that that's actually not my problem? You can't do that when you're a kid in school, and that's, you know, I don't think that really prepares kids for the real world. But in my experience at this school, I was really able to do other things. You know, when I got my work done, I was able to go help the teacher out, maybe do some sweeping, maybe clean things up a little bit, maybe work on a different project. I had that freedom to do that. Or, you know, maybe he would just ask one of us for help with, I don't know, wiping off the whiteboard, or some other task that he had, you know? And it felt a lot more like we're all just people, and like he's just asking somebody for a favor instead of like this rigid, I am the teacher and I'm designating this task for this student, and this isn't usually allowed. All of that is so sterile. All of that is so unhuman and so unnatural. Yeah, anyway, those are my experiences, my life at the one-room schoolhouse, which I loved, and I really liked all of the students there. I think they it's like I think back fondly on my time there. Yeah.